Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Start the 5090 first MCQ paper. Now that you have your exams in the end of July and you have your MCQ exams, so I hope these videos are going to help you in your exams for this for this year, in which the Cambridge has decided to do just an MCQ paper. So we start with the first paper, which is November 2018, paper 1-2, and we will discuss every question. Please let me know if there are any queries and things which are not clear. I'll try to do it in the next videos as I can do as possible and clarify things which are not clear to all of you. So let's start. 90 is for 1 hour and there are 40 questions, so you have about roughly a minute for each question and then to revise them. Now there are certain rules. First of all, leave the questions you do not know. Leave the difficult question. Difficult question means that maybe the difficult questions for one person are difficult for one and not very difficult for the other. So because maybe that chapter is not very clear to you and that MCQ is a little tough, so you just leave the difficult questions and you try to finish all the questions and then you come back to these. So you come back to the ones which you have left. But you don't waste your time in doing the ones which are difficult, because then you're going to miss out even the ones which you know, and then you're going to do those hurriedly. So I don't want you doing that either. So I want you to leave the difficult questions and then you come back at the end and come back and do those questions which you left. Now coming to the first question. Now if you look at the first question, it says a cell is observed under a microscope. Which feature identifies it as a plant cell? What is the fact? What is the thing that you see which says, okay, fine, this is it. This is the one which it is. Now, the cell contains glucose and amino acid. You know that animal cells also have glucose and amino acids. The cells contain stored fat, could be present even in an animal cell. The cell surface membrane is partially permeable. Well, that is not actually what you observe under a microscope. So you don't observe it that it is partially permeable. Cell is observed. Which feature identify it as a plant cell? So the cell contains a large sap vacuole, or if it had said contains chloroplast, then of course that would be the deciding factor that it is definitely a plant cell. Or if it said it has got a cellulose cell wall, that would decidedly say it is. But if it is something else like nucleus, well, animal cell, plant cells both have a nucleus. So going on to question 2. Now, which statement about diffusion are correct? Molecules move from a higher to a lower concentration. Only occurs within living systems. Rate slows down as the temperature increases. So we know these are wrong. Why is this wrong? Because diffusion can also occur if you take a beaker of water, right? And you put a drop of blue ink in it. Well, the blue ink is going to spread out. Diffusion occurs even in anything. You can do experiments on diffusion. You can drop some ink in a beaker of water and that will diffuse out. Perfume diffuses when you have somebody passing by and you say, oh my God, that's a very interesting perfume. Well, because that is diffusion of that perfume has occurred and it's entered your on the receptors in your nose which have been activated and you can actually smell that. Some people actually lose their sense of smell at times. And that's very sad. So, okay, only occurs within living system. That's wrong. Rate slows down as the temperature increases. We can do an experiment of diffusion at 30 degrees Celsius. We can have another beaker at 40 degrees Celsius. And we can have another beaker at 50 degrees Celsius. And we can have 3 beakers and we can study the rate of diffusion. And as the temperature increases, why? As the temperature increases, it increases kinetic energy. And kinetic energy means more Brownian movement. More Brownian movements, that the rate of diffusion will be faster. I said rate of diffusion. Rate is always something to do with time. So per unit time, the rate of diffusion will increase. Why? Because increase in temperature increases kinetic energy. So more the molecules will vibrate. So higher the rate of diffusion. So that was wrong. That was a wrong statement. So this is how you were able to do question 2. Then coming on to question 3. Now question 3 says, it's a long sort of a question. The diagram shows a root hair cell. root hair cell, and this is the root hair cell which you can see here, this one here. So this is the root hair cell, and it has cytoplasm, and it has a vacuole, and it has four labels on it. 1, 2, 3, 4. One seems to look like the soil, the water in the soil or whatever, and 2 is the cell wall, and 3 is the inner layer. So let me just rub this off and then we can see this. And then 3 is the cell membrane and 4 is the cell inside. Now, as we read this question, the diagram shows a root hair cell and surrounding soil particles, and I've just gone through it again, and you can see, what is labeled. First, let's look at the labeling. The labeling is soil, water, and the soil particles. So you can see this labeling, and you must be able. So this would be the soil particle, this would be the soil particle, this would be the soil particle, and all this would be the soil particle. And of course, this dotted line would all be the water. So this is all the water here, and the water here, and the water here. So all this is the water here, which is also, of course, on this side. So this is all the water. And then it says osmosis occurs when regions of higher and lower concentration of water molecules. So from a dilute solution to a concentrated solution, or we can say from a solution with a higher water potential to a solution with a lower water potential, are separated by a partially permeable membrane. Then they've asked you on the diagram, on this diagram, what are these regions? So the higher concentration of water molecules, the partially permeable membrane, and the lower concentration of water molecules. Now, why is it D the answer? Because the higher concentration of water molecules is in part 1. 1 is the water surrounding the soil particles. And then the partially permeable membrane is 3 because there's a double line to this root hair. And the inner line, this is of course coming from the inner line. So this is the inner line, and this is 3, which is the partially permeable membrane. And so we have 3, and then lower concentration of water molecules would be 4. Why 4? Because of course, why would water move in from here into here? It would only move in because there is a lower concentration of water molecules inside the cell sap, and that is number 4, which is the vacuole, and which is the fluid inside the vacuole, which has a lower concentration. So that is why the movement of water is occurring. So this is how we had to do this question. Then we come on to question 4. Question 4 is, what are enzymes? Fats. So of course everybody knows enzymes are proteins. I'm sure everybody knows that. I'm sure there would be hardly any student who did not know that. So we have to come down to these two. Now there's another way by which you do MCQs is you first cross out the ones which are totally wrong. So we know A and B are totally wrong. Now, so it has to be proteins. Now we have to read C and D. Now C is proteins that act as biological catalysts, and then proteins that are unaffected by temperature. Now that is also wrong because there are enzymes are proteins, and proteins are denatured at temperatures above their optimum. We can't say proteins are denatured at higher temperatures because there are certain enzymes which are found inside thermophilic bacteria which have a very high optimum temperature, which exist in volcanoes. And the temperature in the volcanoes is very, very, very high. So enzymes are proteins, and proteins are denatured at temperatures above their optimum. Every enzyme has its own optimum. Then coming on to question number 5, some organisms live at the bottom of the sea where it is very dark. Read the question very carefully. To synthesize glucose, they use energy from chemicals in the very hot water that comes out of volcanoes. What is a distinguishing feature of these organisms? So their enzymes are easily denatured by heat. They do not need carbon dioxide. They do not need to be green. They obtain energy only as carnivores. But they told you that they use energy from chemicals. Now, if you look at photosynthesis, what was photosynthesis? Photosynthesis was light energy to chemical energy. Light energy to chemical energy. And the chemical energy was glucose, and that was in the presence of light, and you needed chlorophyll. which was going to absorb the light, and then it was going to convert this light energy into chemical energy, and carbon dioxide and water would combine to form glucose. But they told you that to synthesize glucose, so here also the chemical energy here in this case also is glucose, but they use energy from chemicals. So basically it is not light energy to chemical energy, it is chemical energy to chemical energy. So chemical energy is being converted to glucose, and glucose is of course another example of chemical energy. Now, the only thing it says what would be the distinguishing feature is they do not need to be green, because here we are not using light energy to convert them. So light energy would be absorbed by the green chlorophyll, the pigment. So please understand why the answer is C. The answer is C for a simple reason, because this was a difficult question. This would be not easy for students to answer. You see, you have to realize MCQs have to be very clear to you. This is the only paper which is going to decide your grade. So you have to get 38 out of 40 to really pass this exam and get an A star or an A. So question 5. Now coming on to question 6. Now when we look at question 6, it's an experimental setup as shown. The volume of gas collected is measured after 30 minutes. After 30 minutes. And this is the gas collected. We have an aquatic plant, we have water, and we have a light source, which is a lamp. And then this light source, the experiment is repeated several times. Each time the light intensity is increased. So we have maybe one lamp, or maybe we have a dimmer switch, and we have increased the light somehow. Which graph shows the results? Now it says which graph shows the results, and if you look at the four graphs, what do they have? On the x-axis they have light intensity. All of them have light intensity. Please look at it carefully. Is it the same graph? Sometimes they change this as well. Then on the y-axis, all of them have volume of gas produced. And volume of gas produced in one case is increasing and then leveling off and then increasing. Here it is increasing and then it is going straight, so it is increasing but then it's remaining the same. And here it is going up and then it's becoming constant, so the volume of gas produced is now not increasing, and then it is increasing. Now I always tell you there is a simple way of doing graphs. You write here 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. So here you write 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and so on and so forth. Volume of gas produced, let's make it say it's 10 cm cube, then 20 cm cube, then 30 cm cube, then 40, then 50, then 60. Now what is happening here is that it's increasing from 10 to 20 to 30, but then it's remaining 40. Now in this case it started at 40 and then it's starting to decrease. In this case it started at 0, the volume of gas produced increases, then levels out and then increases. Here the volume of gas produced increases 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. It increases 10, 20, 30 and then it stays and still keeps on increasing, but then doesn't increase with a gradient. It remains the same. It remains say 40, then it becomes 50, then it becomes 60. So here it was what? So what you have to understand is increasing like this. So as the light intensity increases, now at this point we've kept the light intensity here, but it's still remaining, this is still increasing. So always first understand the graph. Light intensity means one lamp. Here it means two lamps. Here it means three lamps. Here it means four lamps. So you have somehow increased the light intensity. What is the way you can increase light intensity? Number one, you can increase the number of lamps. You can increase the number of lamps. Or you can move the lamp. How do you increase the light intensity? Number one, you can increase the number of lamps. Number two, you can bring the lamp closer to this pondweed or the aquatic plant. Or you can change the power of the bulb. Say you had a 100-watt bulb, or you had a 50-watt bulb. So 50, then 100, then 150, then 200. So how did you increase the light intensity? So this is something you need to understand when you're doing this MCQ. You need to do this entire story in your mind. So which growth shows the result? Why was the answer C? Because you know there's a limiting factor. When you increase the light intensity, after some time, there is just the rate of photosynthesis will become constant. Why? Because more the light, yes, more the rate of photosynthesis, but a time comes when there's not any more chlorophyll to absorb that light. So that light is not going to be absorbed, so the rate is going to become constant. It's just like you have a Mehran car and you press the accelerator, well, that is going to go at a certain speed. But if you have a Ferrari and you press the accelerator full, well, it's really going to go at a much faster speed. So the final speed of a Mehran, if you press the accelerator, is because it has a very small engine and it is not going to go any faster than that. That is going to be the maximum speed it gets to. So please understand these MCQs, and this is one of those difficult MCQs which you need to comprehend and understand. Then coming on to, now we come on to 7. The diagram represents a cross section of part of a leaf. And of course, we know this is the upper layer, this is the cuticle, this is the upper epidermis, palisade mesophyll, this is all the spongy mesophyll, and then of course we have the lower epidermis. Then how does the oxygen content of the air at X, this is an air space in between the cells of the spongy mesophyll and the vascular bundle, air at X compared to normal atmospheric air when the leaf is in the light and when it is in the dark. So please understand, in the light would mean photosynthesis is taking place, in the dark it means only respiration is taking place. In the light it means yes, respiration takes place at all times. So the plant is respiring at all times. But now rate of photosynthesis is higher. Rate of photosynthesis during the light is rate of photosynthesis is more than the rate of respiration. But in the dark, what is happening? There is no photosynthesis, only the plant is respiring. So there is only respiration taking place. Now what do we see? Now how does the oxygen content? So in the light, the oxygen content will be higher, and in the dark it will be lower. So we're only talking of the oxygen content, not of the carbon dioxide. But if I had asked you what would be the carbon dioxide content in the light, in the light, of course, carbon dioxide would be less because it would be absorbed, it would be taken up by photosynthesis. In the dark, it would be more because it's only respiration. So please understand, I can change this question and give it to you. Instead of oxygen here, I can say, how does the carbon dioxide content of the air at X compare to normal atmosphere at air when the leaf is in the light and when it is in the dark? So I've changed this into 2 questions. Now coming on to question number 8. What are the smaller basic units that make up glycogen and protein? And of course, if you know, anybody will know protein is made up of amino acids. So the answer would be C, and glycogen is made up of, it's a carbohydrate, it's a polysaccharide, and it, of course, remember all the, whether it is starch, whether it is glycogen, or whether it is cellulose, they are all made up of glucose units. They are all made up of glucose units. So there is nobody should be confused about this in any way. Let's look at question number 9. If you look at question number 9, which pathway provides humans with the most fiber in their diet? And you know, fiber is what? Fiber is present in basically all the vegetables, all the plant matter that we eat. So the first was soya bean to human, which is the correct answer. But why would this be wrong? Because grass and then cow, and then we are eating the meat of the cow. Then the maize plant and the chicken, then we're eating chicken drumsticks, or we're eating chicken wings, or we're eating chicken kadai. Then microscopic plants and fish, and we are having fried fish, fish and chips. Of course, we didn't have the chips with it. If we had chips with it, then of course we would have a lot of fiber. But because we are having fish, so basically chicken, crustaceans, fish, cow. These are all animal matter, and this would not have any fiber in them. Then we come on to question number 10. A gland secretes different types of enzymes into the part of the alimentary canal which allows digestion of proteins and starch. It also receives alkaline secretions from another gland and contains muscles that are used in peristalsis. Which part of the alimentary canal has been described? Now, why it says why is it A? Now, A is the first part, which is the duodenum or the small intestine, the first part, which allows digestions of protein and starch, and it also receives alkaline secretions from another gland, and that is, of course, the alkaline secretions are from the pancreas, and it receives the pancreatic juice, which contains the three enzymes, trypsin, amylase, and lipase. So the answer to this was A, which is the duodenum. B is the stomach. You see, you have to remember, in the stomach the starch is not digested. C is the pancreas. Nothing is digested in the pancreas. It just produces the enzymes. And D is the large intestine, where there's no digestion. There's just absorption of water and all the salts. Question 11. What is not a function? Now, you usually, when you read this question, you do not see this not word, which is not a function of transpiration. Is, you see, all these are function of transpiration. Transpiration causes minerals to travel up through the plant. Transpiration causes water to move from the roots to the leaves. Transpiration helps to cool the plant. So these are all things of transpiration which it does do. This it does not do. It helps to release energy in cells. No, I'm sorry. Respiration releases energy in cells, not transpiration. So if somebody is confusing this with respiration, well, then I'm sorry. You probably do not know the meaning of transpiration and respiration. And the diagram shows part of a tree trunk. A ring of bark, including the phloem, has been removed. Now, if you remember this, this is the part of a tree trunk, the stem, we have the vascular bundles on the sides. And what have they done? In this situation, what they have done is they have cut this part. So they have removed this part. So this part has been removed. The outer part has been removed. So what we have here is that the outer part has been removed, and it says the tree will eventually die because removing the bark stops the transport of what? If you remember, these vascular bundles here has the xylem is on the inside, and the outside we have the phloem. So what have we done? We've removed all the phloem. So if you've removed all the phloem, then what is not going to be traveling? The sucrose and the amino acids which are being made in the leaves will not travel to the roots. So they will die because it stops the transport of, it says, the bark stops the transport of what? Organic nutrients to the roots. It can't be mineral salts to the leaves, or oxygen to the roots, or water to the leaves, because you see the xylem is intact. This inside things are the xylem. The xylem is intact. Xylem is still intact. They've removed the outer covering. So this is what you had to understand about question number 12. Then coming on to question number 13, which of these organs will receive blood from both an artery and a vein? Will receive blood from both an artery and a vein? It's only the liver. Now that's of course a very interesting question. Artery and a vein. Now if you look at the liver, and then we look at what does it connect with? It connects with the small intestine. And from the intestine, what do we get? We get a vessel here, which comes from all this and collects here and goes here, and then divides into branches here. And this is called the hepatic portal vein. The hepatic portal vein carries blood from the intestine to the liver. This is the liver. But then the liver also receives blood from the aorta. So the aorta going down here also gives a branch which is called the hepatic artery. So the hepatic artery is a branch of the aorta. So the hepatic artery supplies blood to the liver. So it says which of these organs will receive blood both from an artery and receive blood. You see, all organs of the body receive blood from the artery, but the vein takes away blood from that organ. So this is a bit of an English, just tests whether you understand the English of this question or not. So it's not a question which is testing biology, more testing how good your English is. And question 14, the diagram shows a section through the human heart, which suggests that blood leaves the heart at different pressures when going to the lungs and to the body. Which suggests that blood leaves the heart at different pressures when going to the lungs and to the body. Now, chambers R and S. Now, first of all, let's talk of what is R. R is the semilunar valve. S is the Q is the semilunar valve. R is the left atrium. S is the left ventricle. T is the wall of the left ventricle, and U is the wall of the right ventricle. So wall T is more muscular than wall U. That gives us the clue that the heart has different pressures. When it's going to the lungs, it's from the right side. And right ventricle, it goes up, and here it goes up to the lungs, pulmonary artery. And then, of course, the blood returns through the pulmonary vein here and then comes here. So, leaves the heart at different pressures is because of the muscle in the wall of the heart. And then, of course, it's going to leave in the aorta. And the aorta has blood at a higher pressure. Why? Because the wall of the left ventricle is very, very thick, while the wall of the right ventricle is thin. So this is the factor which is going to prove to you that this is going to happen like this. Now coming on to question number 15. The diagram shows chemicals being exchanged between some cells and a blood capillary. What could be the identities of chemical P and Q? P is entering from the blood into the body cells, and Q is something which is coming from the body cells and is returning to the blood, because you see this is the capillary, because you can see the white blood cells and you can see the red blood cells. They're not made to size actually. So what is happening is glucose and oxygen is entering. So this is glucose and oxygen entering the body cells where it will be respired to release energy, and carbon dioxide and water is going back into the blood. So carbon dioxide and water, which is being produced by maybe a process of respiration, it is not needed by the cell, is going to be returned to the blood and is going to be carried in the blood. So the only answer was this, which was the D was the answer. Okay, we finished this video here and we'll continue it in another video, the rest of the questions, and this was only question 1 to 15 which have been answered here in this video. Only question 1 to question 15 have been answered in this video, and the rest will continue in the next video. Thank you very much.